Hello everyone, my name is Oma Louis and you're watching Interact with Oma. We are going to be talking about the struggles, experiences and lives of immigrants in Canada. With me today I have Micheal, who is an immigrant in Canada. Micheal, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm great.
Tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is Micheal. I immigrated here from Israel, right in the Middle East. So I came with my family to Manitoba. So we came to Manitoba and my dad came here by a work visa, right? So work visa means that he had a certain expertise, and because of that, a certain company recruited him to kind of work for them, right? And because of that, he worked for them for about 2 years, and from that he got a permanent residence, which I also received as well, since of course I was part of the family. Then we moved to Ontario, primarily for education purposes. I went to university here in Wilfrid Laurier University. My brother is 2 years younger. He went to Waterloo, University of Waterloo. And then my sister, I have an older sister as well, she went to University of Toronto. So a lot of education here in Ontario, which is great. In Manitoba, it's not as valued, or maybe it's not as common. Most of the jobs are blue-collar jobs rather than kind of office-type jobs. So yeah, the universities are big in Ontario. Beautiful province. I'm very happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
I'm glad. So tell us, how has it been for you as an immigrant in Canada, socializing with people, connecting with people? Do you connect more with Canadians or Israelis, right?
Israelis, right? That's a great question, actually. So it was a little bit more difficult at the start. I think primarily because of the language barrier, and also I have a little bit of accent you can probably hear. That made it a little bit more difficult at the beginning to kind of communicate with other Canadians. But then the good part is that back in Manitoba, we did have a small community of people that did come from Israel, also from Russia. So I kind of had a small community to begin with, which I know not everyone has when they're immigrating. So I think it's great that you have this platform to kind of connect immigrants together. And it does make it easier for immigrants to get by when they know other immigrants that are just like them, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the main purpose of my platform. So it's actually to give immigrants, a chance to get to tell their stories, tell what it truly is like to be an immigrant in Canada. It's filled with ups and downs, some smiling days and some crying days. So how was it like going to school here?
I finished, I actually graduated last year. I had a bachelor's of economics. So I studied economics. The reason I chose economics is not super specific. My friend went into economics, and I thought like, hey, let's do it as well.
Do you speak your local dialect?
Local dialect, yes. So I was born in Russia, and with my family I would speak Russian. Now I did grow up in Israel, which I also speak Hebrew. We speak Hebrew in Israel, right? Like it didn't really help me in Canada, not super much, but sometimes you do happen to come across a Russian, perhaps sometimes a Jewish person. So yeah, it's great to have. You instantly can connect with someone if you just know that you both speak the same language. Yeah. This does happen sometimes in Canada, but yeah. So I do speak 3 languages right now. In high school, we started learning Spanish. It was a great language, and I remember that it's quite similar to Italian. So I think if I were to learn another language, it would probably be Spanish. And then I think it's like a nice introduction to other languages, which again will make me more open to other people, speaking with other communities, other cultures. I think it's important to kind of connect with someone with his mother tongue. That kind of gets the most out of the conversation that you have with him, right?
Yeah, true. I agree with you on that, seriously. Does your personality change when you speak in English?
That's very interesting. Maybe it does, actually. Not sure if I noticed. I think my tone does change. Like the way I say things, like it might sound differently. But maybe, I'm not sure. What I do notice is that the more I started speaking English, kind of the more I've lived here, is that my thoughts have changed from thinking in Hebrew to actually thinking in English, right? So at the beginning, I used to think in Hebrew and then translate every thought into English. So that was quite tricky. Currently, I do think in English for the most part, and that really helps me with my communication.
Hmm, that's interesting.
Yes.
Really interesting. Do you think that immigrants can fully be integrated into their new society? Like, can an immigrant truly feel like they belong in the new society they are in?
I think they can feel like they belong, but at the same time, it depends how long they've lived in their previous country or the previous culture, because some of them might be very different to our Canadian culture. So, like, it would be very nice for them to find people that are similar to their cultures, right? So, like, Middle East is a certain culture, then you have the Asian culture, you have the Western culture, the Southwestern, right? Like South America, they're all different. So it's nice that you have like certain people that are in the same culture and communicate with them. But yes, with Canada, we are very open to other cultures. We're very diverse. So I think that you can definitely feel at home right here, absolutely. But I would also recommend that if you can find people that are similar to you, that would be beneficial.
What are some things that you think are different, from between Canada and your birth country?
I think many things are different. It would have been probably easier to compare when I just came to Canada, because now it feels like kind of home right now. But first of all, a lot of Israel is military centered. We have a lot of military presence in Israel, a lot of soldiers in Israel. So a lot of, if you walk, let's say, on the street, you may encounter soldiers walking with rifles. It's not uncommon to see them with rifles in complete uniforms. Maybe even 10% of the population are just soldiers walking by from their base to their base, stuff like that. A lot of military presence. Yeah, let's say you would go to the mall, you would have to be scanned by a security guard, right? So if you have any weapons, if you have a knife, if you have a gun, and if you go to a bigger mall, you would have to go through an X-ray scan. So you would have to put all your belongings, your backpack, your wallet, into a bucket similar to an airport, and have someone scan it and look at your belongings. So there's a lot of security aspect in Israel, and it is important because the country, there's a lot of tension, as you may know, there's a lot of tension, as you may know, as we have on the news with similar countries, neighboring countries, and the Palestinians as well, which live in Israel. So it's quite difficult, but that's kind of how it is in Israel. A lot of security, a lot of military. When you finish high school, for example, you have to go to military. So even if you're a boy, if you're a girl, boys would go for 3 years, girls would go for 2 years, a minimum. So it's absolutely mandatory, and not everyone likes it. The pay is quite low. They don't pay you much, but that's kind of how it is. In Israel, usually after you finish your military, you would go to, let's say, a vacation, a 1-year vacation, kind of to figure out yourself, find out yourself. Many people would go to India, probably because it's cheap. But then after you go to your vacation, you would start studying. So that's when you start your university. And people often finish university by the age of 27 per se, let's say 27. And only then they start working, they start living. So the lifestyle in Israel is quite different. The way you kind of are raised up, the way you grow up. In Canada, you can decide to go to the military, or you can decide to go to university, or you can decide to right away go to a job, right? There's a lot more options. And I think that's great about Canada.
Yeah. So being someone with this kind of background, okay, coming to Canada, before going to the university, did you ever think of, okay, why not join the military? I mean, that's what my mates are doing back home, right?
Well, maybe I should have. In Israel, it's quite patriotic to go to the military. There's a lot of like a sense of respect for someone that's in the military, for someone to go to the military, it's seen as a great honor, like very patriotic. In Canada, it would be probably better. The conditions were probably better, and then the pay would be much better than Israel.
Right.
In Israel, it's almost like volunteering when you go to the army. They pay you maybe $200 a month, very small wages. It's not about the money there. It's just we got to do this. We live in a country that needs our services, so there's a high sense of duty to go to the military. In Canada, why didn't I go to the military? I did think about it, but in the end, I chose to kind of go to university. Not sure why. It just happened this way. I think my parents would probably not be very happy if I went to the military. So that's probably a big reason. But yeah, I mean, I think going to the military is a great service to your country. I don't think it's a bad thing to go to the military. Not all the jobs in the military, not all the positions in the military are like holding a gun and shooting people. Like you can be supporting your airplane, like airplane force.
Yeah.
Right, there's a lot of roles. It's not all of it is combative, right? So yeah, it's an option for sure for many people. For me, just it didn't happen to be that path.
Yeah.
So
Did you find it hard to adjust as an immigrant to Canadian weather,
Canadian weather
especially winter?
is crazy. Yes, when I came here in December, I believe. So it was really at the height of the winter. And now in Manitoba, it's slightly colder than in Ontario. So it was even worse. So as soon as I came from the airport, I opened the doors. I could barely breathe because the cold was so strong. I was never used to it. In Israel, for example, we would have snow maybe once every 3 to 4 years, right? So it's a big event, and the snow is kind of mushy. You can make snowman, right? And here, I landed, the snow, it was like powder, it was like sand. You can't really make a snowball, you can't throw it at your brother. So yeah, it was kind of a shock. I never even knew snow could be like this. I never knew how cold it is. But now, of course, I'm definitely used to it. Now I can go just without any jacket outside, right? Like at the beginning, one of the first things we bought was a big jacket, ginormous poofy jacket. Because yeah, like you're totally not used to it. But now it's almost second nature. So yeah, definitely the winters are hard, but you do get used to it.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
So tell us, why the career switch from studying economics to working right now as a realtor? What happened?
As
Why
a
did you
realtor,
change?
well, first of all, COVID happened, the coronavirus.
Right.
So when I graduated in 2020, we didn't even have a ceremony. Like the virus just started, and the jobs were quite difficult. So let's say before, if you would need to do 200 applications for different jobs and then get, let's say, 2 interviews, and with COVID, it tripled. So you would need to do, let's say, 600 resumes, and then you would get like 2 interviews from that. It was much more difficult to find a job. There was a lot of fear, a lot of unknowns regarding to what COVID will do, what it even means, how deadly it is, right? People were scared. People didn't know what's going to happen. So I thought it was a good opportunity for me to either continue my studies or maybe get a certificate. Since you can't really get a job, how about you just continue knowledge, like continue learning something new. Now, my friend was doing his real estate license, and I thought, hey, why don't I give it a try? It's an online course. It will take you just a few months. It does take some money, but it is education, something that I was looking for at the time. So I did take the plunge. I did not see myself as doing anything that's salesperson, anything like that. But while I was doing my last year in university, I was kind of buying and selling bikes. So I kind of had like this side hustle of flipping bikes, like customizing them. It was a hobby of mine, and I kind of turned it into a small business. The issue that I had is that I did not have enough volume, so not a lot of inventory of bikes, not a lot of bikes like to to find or to buy or to sell, right? It was just not something that's super practical. But with real estate, the job was similar, but there's way more houses to be sold, to be purchased, right? So I thought that it's one of those jobs that I could do well at, right? So that was my first criteria. I'm looking for something that I can do well rather than something that, let's say, I enjoy, because I feel like if you do something well, you are going to enjoy it. That's what I believe. So that's why I chose real estate in specifically. And yeah, it's certainly a very difficult career. And lately the market has been going quite crazy, you might have heard. So it's difficult for people to buy. Not a lot of people are even looking to sell because of coronavirus. There's a lot of fear, like, where am I going to go next? Like, how can I even buy my next home if I need to move? Like, I need to find something else, and finding something else is so difficult right now, so that people kind of don't sell their home. And at the same time, because of coronavirus, people are trying to work from home.
You are now a Canadian citizen. How does that feel?
It feels great. It took a while. We were 2 years permanent residents, and then after 5 years in living in Canada, we could apply for our citizenship. Yes, so we had to have this specific exam. It wasn't hard. I actually got perfect score, 20 out of 20. But yes, to get a citizenship, you have to go through an exam. You have to go to this ceremony place where you meet this judge, and you kind of have this whole official thing. You might see some photos I sent you, but yeah, it's a nice thing, and it's nice to know that you speak sometimes with Canadians and you can tell them, hey, I'm an immigrant, I'm a citizen just like you.
Yeah.
Right? And it often makes them laugh because, yeah,
it feels good.
It feels great.
That's an outstanding performance to have 20 over 20
really?
in the Canadian citizenship examination. How did you achieve that?
I appreciate
Please give
that.
us some.
Well, maybe I can add some details to stroke my ego, but I also finished first.
You know, it's worth it. You need a round of applause. I'm clapping.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I finished first. I got 20 out of 20. How did I study? I don't even remember, but you know what? Since I've been doing university here, I'm quite used to doing all these multiple choice questions. So yeah, maybe it's natural, maybe it's a talent. I'm not even sure what's the secret. Let's say when I was doing the Hamburg course, right? I was one of those guys that I can take a week before taking an exam, and I can pass the exam quite well. So for some reason I learn fast, not sure why. That's kind of my style. Sometimes when I listen to a book, right, instead of looking at a book page by page, I would go to YouTube, I type the book in, and I would click 3 times the speed. And that's the best way I learn. I learn the best when it's fast. My brain is the most engaged. That's kind of how I work. I know not that everyone is the same. That's just how I am.
That's good. When it comes to dishes, do you prefer Canadian dishes or Russian or
dishes? Food. Yes. Well, Canadian food is great. We have this delicious dish called poutine, which we never had in Israel, but it's absolutely delicious. I used to eat it definitely once a week in university, sometimes once per day. But yeah, it's awesome. We do eat sometimes still Russian food in Israel, sometimes Israeli food. The good thing about Canada is we have a lot of restaurants that are either Russian or Middle Eastern, which are similar to my taste. Like we have this one Middle Eastern restaurant called Arabesque. They have delicious hummus from chickpeas. Absolutely recommend to everyone. There's pitas there, very fresh. They taste almost like a cake, even though they're just bread. You buy some hummus, buy pitas, you can definitely have an Israeli experience as close as you can right here in Canada.
I'm already imagining myself trying this out.
And then for Russian store, we have this store called, I think, European Foods, something like that. So it's a whole store where a lot of Russian, Polish type of foods exist. It's nice place to go. There's a lot of, let's say, cheeses and sausages. A lot of the Russian food involves like a variety of cheeses, right? Sausages, pastrama, salami, all this stuff. big thing in Russian culture. So I'd recommend you go there as well. I'm not sure if it's pronounced right. Something with European.
Oh, yeah.
European
Just
something.
do well to follow him up, connect with him on his social platform. He can actually recommend most of all these restaurants and meals
Definitely.
for you to eat. What are the three things that you would say you love most about living in Canada?
Living in Canada, well, I like in Ontario specifically, let's say the nature, the topography. I like that it's quite hilly. So in Manitoba, it wasn't this way. It was very flat. There was not a lot of trees or forests. What we did have is a lot of lakes. We had a lot of snowmobiles there. So there's different types of activities. But in Manitoba, in Ontario, a lot of it is nature. A lot of nature here. We have these big lakes, Huron Lake. What are other lakes? I don't even know. But I love going out in nature. I do cycle quite a lot, riding a bike, right?
Yeah, I saw that.
I have like silly clothes. Yes, I'm one of those guys. I like to do about 150 to 200 kilometers a week. Lately with work, it has not been super possible to do this much cycling. But yeah, I do like to explore, ride around. Sometimes I ride to Stratford, let's say, Elora, Elmira, Guelph, lots of places, right? So riding a bike really helped me kind of explore more of Ontario and kind of where we live at as well. Currently, I've went to about 20% of all the streets in Waterloo, so that's good. I think, yeah, it's yeah. So I've been to a lot of places. I think maybe a nice challenge would be to maybe try to ride on every street in Waterloo, in Kitchener-Waterloo, just to see how it is. I'm sure I'm gonna be crossing the same street many times.
You have like group of friends that you ride with, or you just ride alone?
Yeah, actually, we have this club in Waterloo called the Waterloo Cycling Club, a creative name. But yeah, we kind of bike together. Sadly, with this lockdown, we can't bike. But yeah, there's a great community there, Waterloo Cycling Club. There's different levels of cycling. So if you're like a beginner, you have your own group. If you have more faster people, you can go with them. And if you have super fast people, you can also join them as well, right? So there's a lot of members in that group, in that club. We have our own clothing line. It's really fancy. So if you're into cycling, Waterloo
Join
Cycling
them.
Club.
Yes, Micheal is the guy you meet if you're into cycling and you're looking for a group of friends. Before you immigrated into Canada, you were already of age. At least, how old were you?
When I immigrated here, I was, I believe, 15 or 16, right? Actually, that's when I got my license as well for driving. It's one of the different things that in Canada you don't do in Israel. It's much more expensive to get your driver's license.
Oh, really?
And also a car. Cars are way more expensive in Israel than they are here, as well as insurance. So it's quite nice that at a young age you can start driving, gain some independence, because like the culture here, maybe the buildings or everything is built around having a car. You can't really walk where you want to go. Most people can't bike, although some could. But yeah, you kind of do need to have a car here, and it's great that there's the ability to get your license quite easily in Canada. In Israel, it would be quite expensive, and the car itself is expensive. The fuel as well. Gas is way more expensive in Israel than it is here. I know people sometimes think that gas prices are rising, but imagine if it was double that tomorrow, right? So it would be quite a big difference. And that's how it is in Israel. It's a lot more expensive to drive, own a car, transportation in general.
Thank you for joining us and for spending your time with us. I actually enjoyed chatting with you and getting to learn a whole lot about you, Israel, and all of that. Thanks again for sharing all that with us. Thanks to our guest, Micheal, for sharing his story with us today. I learned a whole lot, and I hope you did too, and that you enjoyed his stories and experiences he shared with us. Please don't forget to like our page, subscribe, and share your comments if you have any. Thank you. Bye.